What's up, everybody? Welcome to the third episode of the Pink Cancer Podcast. My name is Dan Tramontozzi. I am the founder and executive director of Pink Cancer, which is a wrestling nonprofit. We unite wrestlers, coaches, and fans to raise money and awareness for people affected firsthand by cancer. And today, I have a really special guest who reached out. Tyler Rogers is a former wrestler, and he is a stage 4 cancer survivor. Tyler, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you hopping on. You reached out to me. I know you bought one of our t-shirts and you connected with someone on our board, Eric Shaw, who he is a great guy. He's a former college teammate of mine too. And I'm glad that you guys connected. And you never know where, a new supporter will come from, whether it's like on a professional side or just, a wrestling mom that wants to get her kid involved. So it's really great to have you on. Um,
Appreciate that.
First off, I just want to intro you and just our audience. The reason why we're doing this podcast is just to share stories, really. And, we want to talk to cancer survivors, and you have a wrestling background, and we want to, learn more about, maybe how wrestling helped you without this, throughout this whole process, and maybe
Mhm.
just your take on our nonprofit. So why don't you just dive in, introduce yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. Appreciate the intro. Yeah, started wrestling actually in ninth grade. So really didn't have a lot of previous knowledge about it. I was friends with a couple of buddies that were on the football team, and our wrestling coach was also the JV football coach. And so they went in and I went there. They quit 2 weeks later, and here I am. I'm a lifetime wrestling fan, and I get to go to my first NCAA's this year. I'm really
Get
pumped about it in
out. Oh,
Philly.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
see you there then. I'll be there.
Love it. I'll meet you in person. Yeah. So, I mean, wrestling had such an impact on me. I'll tell you what it did for me that resonates with me now more than ever. It's discipline. I really learned a healthy amount of discipline wrestling that is translated over into my adult life with work, how I view everything, and how I am committed to really being successful at everything I do. So I thank wrestling and my coaches for that more than anything. Still work out daily, as a result of wrestling as well. And I think it just really impacted me in probably more ways that I could even put into words. Um, Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I share the same enthusiasm towards all of it too. I think a lot of wrestlers will say the same thing. You touched on discipline.
Mhm.
Nothing teaches you discipline like this sport. I got my little guy. He's about to turn 7 years old. He's in his second year of wrestling, and he's still out there. He loves it. He cries when he loses, which means, it's not a terrible thing because I know that he's learning a lot more than just wrestling, and also it's part of the process. I mean, you're going to lose a lot, especially in the beginning, but it teaches you just not to give up. And like you said, it's something that you can echo in your professional career. I've done the same exact thing. I talk about that all the time, like just your mindset and drive to want to succeed and better yourself. And I'm glad I'm seeing it a lot more online. The sport is growing, specifically, girls wrestling, but I think I just saw the other day, I don't know if you follow Jocko.
Mhm.
He's just like a big influencer, right? And he posted something that just came up on my feed. I think it was yesterday, and he said, "Get your kids wrestling," and it was a picture of him coaching and one of his kids. It's like, yeah, you need to take some of these guys' advice, and you talk about, again, I'm going to repeat it, the discipline aspect of it, but you spoke about your professional career, but why don't you dive into like what your diagnosis was like when were first diagnosed with cancer, and just kind of talk about that, talk about the process and the journey and how you dealt with it.
Sure. I appreciate that question. Yeah. So it really started with an itch, believe it or not. I had a little dot on my foot. And I'll just walk you through the whole process. I think it's important so people understand where the whole came from. Remember, I had a little dot in my foot, and I thought this is kind of itchy, but didn't think anything of it. Thought it was a bug bite. Over the course of the next 2 years, actually, that spread essentially over my entire body. And I was very itchy all over, and I really couldn't pinpoint what was wrong with me. Um, I kept going to dermatologists because naturally, your skin itches, you're going to go to a dermatologist. About three different dermatologists told me they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They believed it was psychosomatic. They really didn't know what was wrong, but it's kind of driving me crazy. And I thought there's something wrong with me, but I can't pinpoint it. Until one day I had a bit of a lump in my chest. And I told my mom, "Hey, mom, I think there's something really wrong with me. Could we go to the hospital?" And I was 30 years old, but just
Wow.
talking to my mom about it, we went to the hospital, and within about an hour, they said, "Okay, we believe that it's cancer. Ended up figuring out it was Hodgkin lymphoma, stage 4B. I was pretty far along. And they figured it out with a lymph node. They take your lymph node out of your arm and they figured it out pretty quickly. Now, I'm lucky in the sense that there's a lot of cancers out there that will spread to other parts of your body. So I'm as lucky as a stage 4 cancer guy could be. I'm lucky in the fact that it's a very diagnosable cancer and very easily to take. So yeah, I immediately started chemotherapy, did the full 6 months of chemotherapy, lost all my hair, did full 3 months of radiation after that. And I have felt spectacular ever since. And
Wow.
if anybody's curious of the itching and why I was itchy, end up my white blood cells were trying to push through my skin and were causing a reaction and causing me to itch. And
Wow.
so as soon as I started the chemotherapy, I felt great. Lucky to be here in May, actually on May 5th. It will be my 10-year anniversary from when I was
Nice.
diagnosed. Yeah.
Congrats, man. That's awesome to hear.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Mhm.
I have a question for you. So,
Mhm.
I just spoke to a wrestler who's battling something similar. I think it's actually the same exact cancer. And he went through chemo and everything, lost his hair recently. We just had a podcast with him and he kind of shared his story and he has seen some great results as well. So,
Mhm.
but I do have a question because, um, my mom went through this. This is one of the reasons why I started it. And, I hear this a lot. How did your body react to the chemo? And like, how would you describe that? Was it just terrible?
It was pretty terrible. I'm lucky in the fact that I was a young man and I was able, I think, to handle it maybe a little bit better physically. But yeah, it just took a lot out of me. Mentally, the nausea, that piece. I will say though that life doesn't stop. We come back to that disciplinary aspect. I still worked. I still went to work every day.
Mm.
I still worked out regularly. I tried my best to not let it defeat me mentally. I really wanted to say, hey, I can overcome this. I'm a lucky man. I have a lot of
Mm.
support in place. I have a lot of people that are here to help me. So if I just stay focused and stay, focused on getting better and continuing to live my life, it's not going to get the better of me. I really felt like the mental aspect was an advantage that I had
Yeah.
over others potentially. Mhm.
And that's something that we speak we speak towards a lot within wrestling. And, I was on the Wrestling Mindset podcast and
Mhm.
what they're doing, I think is just great. And it's so true. And it's not just, I try to take this approach professionally as well. And even personally is your mind is a really strong tool. And if you're in the wrong mindset, it can make something like that just a lot worse. And I
Yeah.
think maybe you can talk to this, but do you feel that wrestling helped you get through this? Is it something that you could say, wrestling was really hard. I'm guessing chemo is probably even harder,
Mhm.
but just the ability to be like, it sounds like you were practicing gratitude as it related to like, hey, I'm still here, I'm still working. And it almost sounds like you didn't want anything to change. I know some people probably have a mindset where they're just gonna not necessarily give up, but they're just always looking at the negative, where it sounds like you weren't really doing that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Just really trying to practice gratitude, right? Life's going to throw all kinds of stuff at you. Just the fact that I think I knew that the stress that it could have potentially caused me is going to be significantly worse than anything that I could be putting up with from that perspective. So I thought if I just keep my eyes on the prize, if I think about that, I have other people that are relying on me. I have family that love me. They're here to support me. I just knew that if I could stick to it and, you come back to wrestling, you're right. I thought about it a lot where you talked about losing a lot of matches and I may have shed a few tears along the way as well, like your son did. But my first year in it, we didn't have anybody to wrestle the 112-pound varsity team. I was 98 pounds as a freshman,
Mhm.
soaking wet. And so I ended up wrestling the 112 varsity team, lost every single match. I could have thrown in the towel. I could have thrown it in before I even finished the season, but I wanted to stick with it. I continued to do freestyle and Greco every year. My second year, the year after, I won the district at 103 at a more normal weight for me. But I think that just knowing, hey, I didn't give up on that. People are not giving up on me. I owe it to them to really stick through this. Right? There's so many people as an adult, there are so many people that have invested in me and so many people that have invested so much time and effort and energy. I owed it to them. I really felt like I owed it to them to stick through that and make an impact. And that's really why I
Mm.
reached out to you. I was hoping to get my story out there. And even if it could just impact one person and make them feel positive, then I really feel like it's done its job.
That is awesome to hear. It's very
Mhm,
impactful. I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned a handful of times there is your family and
mhm,
like the support system. This is one thing that we talk about, and my family was affected firsthand, and it just kind of rattled us. Unfortunately, my mom lost her battle to cancer about 5 years
mhm.
in, but I always say that something positive came out of it. This conversation came out of all that. What we've been able to do to kind of help families, but how important is that? Is to have like that support structure, and especially when you're going through something like a cancer diagnosis and battling it.
Yeah, man. I'm an only child to a single mother. She's awesome. Her name's Lisa. She is
Mm.
everything for me. My support. We're each other's family, right? And she was there with me when the doctor told me, about my diagnosis. And so I just knew, hey, we're each other's world. And so just to have her here, I had just actually moved back I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I had just moved back from DC. And so I lived with her for a while during my diagnosis. My grandma traveled all the way up from Florida because my mom works. So for her to continue to work, my grandmother took care of me,
Mm.
spoke to all took me to my appointments, spoke on my behalf to all the different organizations and trying to get me Medicare and Medicaid. Unfortunately, none of that worked out, but I had my family, in terms of getting all that piece, but
Mm.
that's why I continue to work. But just having them in place, man, they really help me stay strong and get me where I need to be. It's easy to kind of take your eyes off of what's important, particularly when you're battling something like that. It can feel very isolating having cancer. Because and I get it's hard to deal with that human emotion. So a lot of people will kind of stay away from you. I think just kind of
Mm.
scared to talk about reality. And I'm such an open book that I tend to kind of talk to people about things and maybe make them feel uncomfortable. But just know that if there's somebody in your life that's dealing with that, just reaching out to them, telling them that you're thinking about them, it could just really mean
Yeah.
so much from that perspective. And I'm just so blessed to have family to help me. And again, so many people have invested in me. I really felt like I owed it to them to do something about it. And another key piece of this as well, something you may not ask, but something that I really feel like such a miracle about. They gave me such a small likelihood of ever being able to have children. Even before I had chemo, my doctor recommended, hey, we really recommend, if you ever want to have kids, maybe go sperm bank and do all those types of things. Unfortunately, my body was so weak that I was unable to do anything about that. Luckily, I have two kids now.
Nice.
I had a 3-year-old and a toddler. But just the fact that, I always, I guess, had that fear in my mind, while I may not ever actually be able to have kids, just the fact that I just feel so blessed, so happy that I'm able to add to my family, contribute from that piece, and just, I'm a blessed man.
That is awesome. What a great
Yeah.
story. I'm happy to hear
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
One of the reasons why, we exist and we kind of shifted our focus in terms of who our beneficiaries are for the organization over the years. We used to donate a lot to like St. Jude. There's some other like pediatric cancer organizations that we supported this year, but our board, and this is actually something that Eric came to me with. He a couple of years ago, he had a kid on their team that was diagnosed, and at the time, pink cancer kind of took a back seat with me because after COVID, we took a little bit of hit. There was no wrestling season. I think mentally in my own mind, I was always like, this will never be big enough. And, I'm not going to make an impact. And when Eric came to me and said, I have a 6-year-old on my team who just lost his dad to cancer, and he is also battling cancer, single mom, can we raise some money? But instead of it going to St. Jude, we need it to go to this family. And I said, like, absolutely, like we need to do that. And
Hmm.
that's really how we shifted all of our donations raised this year, and we're trying to get the word out. And part of it was through this podcast. But the reason why I brought up like your family and you
Hmm.
continued to work, it sounded like insurance wasn't 100% backing you, and
Hmm.
I know that's the fact for a lot of families. Financially, they struggle. So that's why we're kind of shifting our focus to the money that's being raised by a lot of these teams are staying right in their community and is helping families that are affected firsthand that are dealing with cancer. Sometimes it's someone on the wrestling team, sometimes it's a parent, whatever it is. But not just financially, but time also. Like if a parent has to take away time to go to work and their employer is not working with them for some reason on that, like that's a really big burden. But what we've seen is when we when we communicate that a specific team is raising money for somebody that's personally battling this disease, we see just a lot more donations raised. So going back to your point where like family was so important to you, I feel like what we're trying to hit on with the wrestling community is if you're a wrestler, it's like you're a wrestler for life. Like you said, you're going to the NCAAs.
Mhm.
It's like a pastime for, people that have retired, I guess, from the sport, from competing. But I don't know anybody that I didn't wrestle with throughout all my years that still wouldn't go to the NCAAs if they had an opportunity to go. I'm kind of going all over the place with this, but to bring it back, like the wrestling community itself, what we're seeing is we're just seeing a lot more support when it's going towards family. And I feel like I wish we were around our New Year case years ago because like that would be the perfect example of somebody going through this who, single mom, only sibling, having grandma come up and have to support. Do you think financially, like even five or $10,000, something like that, would have helped, whether it's groceries or anything?
Oh, absolutely. And just maybe even been in a situation to help me with bills and not being able to work.
Mhm.
No doubt about it. I mean,
Yeah.
and just, you're right. This is the reason I wanted to be on the podcast, that wrestling's a community and we need to get the word out there about how great our sport is, because there's not enough people advocating for us. And so we really need to be on the front lines to advocate what an awesome sport it is and that we're a community. And it's done so much for me in my life. I'm probably more obsessed with wrestling, collegiate wrestling now than I ever was when I was a wrestler.
Same,
Now that
same.
I'm removed from the pain of how tough it is. But yeah, it's just, I'm obsessed. I love the Wrestling Mindcap podcast that you mentioned. I just really wanted to, I felt like this was something small that I could do to give back. But I cannot emphasize that enough. What you're doing to help these families is probably so huge. And not only that, it's just going to make them so just more ingratiated into the wrestling community that they're going to want to give back, and then that's going to multiply, and over time it's going to help grow our sport and
Yeah.
really help others understand what an awesome sport it is with some awesome people.
Yeah, it
So,
definitely
mm,
is. And thank you for saying
mm,
all that.
mm,
Everyone that I spoke to so far and everyone I've spoken to over the years, they say the exact same thing. It's like
mm,
people want to get the word out about wrestling. It's a tough sport. There's a reason why, you don't do it in gym class because it is hard. It's the hardest sport you're ever going to do. Physically, mentally, what you put your body through, cutting weight, it's the whole aspect of it teaches you a lot. And the last podcast I did, the one lady that pretty much organized all the efforts for this family that we raised, well, the team raised a bunch of money for to support him. He's battling cancer. She said the same thing. Like, I hope, I hope we tell this story and it helps somebody, but also there's like an underlying initiative to these types of podcasts is to get more eyeballs on the sport, to say like, look what the sport's doing. I think stand up to cancer got huge because like
mm,
MLB got behind it, right? It's like my goal would be that we get so big because the entire wrestling community gets behind it, and that's also good for the wrestling community. Obviously, it's going to help us a whole lot and help people, but I think wrestling as a whole, we need to do more. So I'm hoping that
mm,
this type of conversation does just that. Maybe somebody watches this that isn't doesn't know anything about wrestling and says, "Oh wow, like I have a 10-year-old. Maybe I should get him to wrestling because these guys sound like good guys and it's a good community and it's going to teach you a lot."
yep.
Um, it teaches you how to be tough, and if you're going to get diagnosed with cancer, you need to be tough all around physically. It's going to take a toll on you. I think mentally it takes a bigger toll on you. Financially, it's all these things. So perhaps wrestling helps you with the mental toughness and the physical toughness that someone might endure during battling cancer. And then maybe pink cancer can be the financial piece of it. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I love that Dan Gable quote, right?
Yeah,
Once you've wrestled, everything's easier.
that's
And
true.
so I kind of continue, he's essentially my idol, right? I loved everything regarding Dan Gable as soon as I learned wrestling. And I really continue to play that in my mind consistently. And when I was battling that, I kept telling myself, hey, you've been through tougher things than this. That
Yeah.
alone, you have, support from your family. You can do this. And so I just kind of helped me steamroll ahead. And again, I'm a blessed man. I'm happier now than I've ever been. And can't thank my family enough and the wrestling community. And so I want to give back any way I can. So
Well,
you bring up a good point. People struggle. If anybody's
yeah.
watching this, if anybody ever has any questions for me, want to pick my brain, I'm an open book. I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to talk with you about it. Any struggles I've been through. I'd be happy to help anybody that's struggling with the same thing.
That just sparked an idea in my head. We got to bring you on as like an official pink cancer ambassador, right? And maybe we do this where we connect people that need to talk to somebody who's gone through it, or a similar situation or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Just like I'm doing here, maybe you can do with somebody else. I think that would be a huge. It'd be very beneficial for somebody that's
Yeah.
going through this, whether it's somebody actually battling or a parent that has a child battling, whatever it may be. I think if we can get, that type of connection out there, we can do a lot. You can do a lot more than just raise donations for a family to help them financially. I think
Mhm.
that in itself would help somebody in their mindset. And they don't have to be a wrestler or a former wrestler. If someone's going through a cancer diagnosis or whatever it may be, sometimes they don't have anybody to talk to. And they talk to the same people and they get into a routine. They go to see their doctor, they do their chemo, they come home. And sometimes you need somebody to just talk to. So
Yep.
I'm gonna take you up on that, and we'll make you an official Pink Cancer ambassador for sure. Get you some more
Love it.
gear.
I'm pumped. Yeah, you'll see me up in Philly in March with my Pin Cancer shirt. So this
I'll
is
be
just
there too.
Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, I was gonna say spot the shirt and you'll find me. So
I have we're doing an event out there with the National Wrestling Coaches Association. Those guys, we've partnered with them this year, and they've been great in just helping us get some more eyeballs on our organization and the mission. But they're doing a networking event, which
mhm.
is, I think it's before the finals. So it's after, I guess, that last round before the finals on Saturday.
Mhm.
But I have an extra ticket. So if you're around, it's yours. And we get to eat and drink and hang out and talk to everybody, the who's who in the wrestling community. So we shall do that.
I would nerd out on that so
All
hard. I would
right.
love that so hard. Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's do it. Absolutely. Anything
Cool.
else you want to touch on?
Man, just anybody that's out there struggling, you're not alone. You know, I'm open door. I'm sure Dan would love to talk to you, even if it's just asking questions about what can I expect here, what can I expect there. Again, I'm happy to speak with you. It's nice to know that there are other people out there that have gone through it, and you can do it.
Thank you. We're going to end on that. That is perfect. Thanks, Tyler, so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Thanks, Dan. It was a pleasure.